Hi, it's John Coast Mason R&D. Well, today we're over here by the seat and guide machine, our Sunnen VGS-20. And I wanted to share with you a few speed secrets on this machine that I've developed ever since I worked at Sunnen. They just didn't really put everything that was really needed on this machine, but it is what it is, and we have to work with it, and we've actually made it better. So I'm going to show you some of these things that I've done. Let's start over here on the tool rack, and as you can see, it's a bit taller than the standard tool rack. This is something I developed. The standard tool rack comes up to about here and has all this stuff in here. Well, I figured it was time to make it a little bit larger so I could put a lot more pilots up here. It makes it handier to grab and go when you need something. You have all your core drills and reamers and drill chucks and everything up here. I also made some little pilots down here to set my tools on, which makes it very handy. And I'm going to show you a few of the tools that I've made for this machine here in a little bit. But you also want to have your seat cutters. The Sunnen seat cutters are very nice because they're adjustable. But occasionally you want to buy some that you know that you're going to be using all the time, that are preset. And down here's my junk drawer, so to speak, and you can see there's a lot of interesting bits and pieces down here. I also made it so that I could put a little piece here on the side so I could hold my pilot tool, and I've got one on the other side which actually comes with the machine. And you can see that I've added this little piece here to hold my important tools that I'm constantly using. I park my valve adjusting tool or my seat cutter adjusting tool right here on the corner. And the springs, as you probably well know, these springs eventually get all balled up, and you're forced to buy Sunnen springs because these little brass pieces go on the spring to keep the spring from unwinding, because they use a left-handed helix on the spring where you need a right-handed. And if you use a right-handed helix versus left, you can put these on there. You can buy these down at your local hardware store. They have all different sizes. Now, some of the other bits and pieces we've got in here. I've got these two little bars right here, which are very important to me. I have some bolts that I've made up to go with these bars. Another thing is a little loop here to check your sizes, because a lot of times the numbers on the pilots get worn. I've also taken and added a strip along here so I can put my chuck keys and also my keys for tightening up my cutter bodies. The other bits and pieces up here, I've got some counterbores for cutting for seals and what have you, and of course a lot of the pilots for knocking in and out the different guides. I also put this on a little spigot here to make it handy. Same thing with these guys here. I made it longer so that they would all go on there. And I also have a few custom made drivers for seats that the standard set just doesn't seem to get. I've also mounted a board on here and installed my seat concentricity checker. And if you're doing a lot of big block Chevys and what have you with the porcupine valves, as they call them, I put my alignment bar up here. So that's about it for that. And then down here on the side, I've mounted my carbide sharpener. I made a bracket which bolts to the side of the machine, and it's really handy to have it right there next to the machine. Well, I've got a small block Chevy set up here to show you some of these other bits and pieces I've made. If you notice here on the clamp, it actually sticks out a little bit. Well, that's because I took this flat plate that normally sits back over here and drilled some extra holes in it so that I could actually stick it out and get a little bit better grab onto some of the bits and pieces that I put on here. Now, one of the things I also made was a series of additional plates that are actually longer. Grab one here. There we go. Made these out of O2 steel. and when they go on there they stick out even farther, and that makes it handy for a lot of the import heads that you have nowadays. There's also the additional thickness pieces to go in here that give you a little more height. The problem with these though is they don't stick out as far as they should, so I've drilled and tapped additional holes here to allow them to be bolted on here a little further away. So those are some things I've done for that. The pegs that hold the head on the or that go in the head to hold it to the clamping device here, I've actually made another pair, which on some cars you need that additional height in there, and I found it was just easier to make these things up than try and put some sort of little block in here to try and make it work. So I made up a pair of these, and also have those on the tool board over here, which makes it real handy when you need them. Another one of the things for setting these heads up that I like is these little bullseye levels that you can buy at the hardware store. They're fairly inexpensive. It makes it real handy if you have to drill out bolts on the exhaust or the intake side. You can set this thing up pretty easy. And let's see here where we're going. There we go. You can center this thing up, and it makes it much easier to level the head when you have to drill those out. You can also use this on the exhaust side, or the intake side and the exhaust both. Another modification I made was to put a handle on this lock here. They just give you some little cheesy aluminum thing, and I find that this is much easier to grab a hold of, and it makes locking much easier. If you have to cut the guide bosses down to install screw-in studs like has already been done on this head, I generally try and keep an old 3/8 stud that I pulled out, so that I can stick it down the hole and stick my level on here to level out the head this way and this way here. It makes it pretty quick to do, and it gets you a fairly accurate result. When you have to trim down these bosses on a stock head, I've made up a tool for doing that. I've taken an old guide cutter for doing the PC seals, and I've welded on a piece of carbide, and I've made it extra wide so that when it goes down in here, it cuts the whole boss, and this actually works out really nice. This is another tool I've made for cutting chamfers, and it works out really well. Here's another tool I made for cutting chamfers, and this one actually has a replaceable insert, which makes it real handy to change out should you bang the thing up. And again, you can make these if you have a mill and a lathe. You can make a lot of tools for this machine. Well, this is the little head holder adapter that I made for the machine. I use this mostly for Volkswagens and Porsches. I can set the heads up in here. Like so, and it holds them real nice and neat. You put a couple of bolts down through here, and essentially that's what these bars are for, and these bolts here. You can set this underneath the head, drop this down through one of the bolt holes, and screw it into this, and then hold the head to the machine. You'd be surprised how many times you use these little bars. And when you make these up, you want to put your holes about an inch apart and put several in there, because you'll have to adjust this back and forth depending on the cylinder head. Again, like I say, we do a lot of Porsches, and we also do these Volkswagen heads where we do lots of work on these. And again, this makes it so that it sets up much easier and much faster. And being that it's short, makes it all the more handy. If you do a lot of Jaguar heads like we do, you probably have this adapter for your machine, because it's about the only way that you can get the things bolted down correctly. They have a series of clamps that go underneath this, and a couple of bolts like this that go down through the head, and it goes down into this clamp, which has a little ratchet in there, and then you can tighten this down and secure the head to the bracket. Well, these are some of the cutter bodies. This one here is for the standard size pilot. This is the larger size. They have one that's a little smaller here to hold the smaller diameters. But as you can see, we have what's called a bowl hog, or whatever you want to call it, but we use these for opening up the throat of the port, and they work out really well. The screws for these, if you buy them from Sunnen, they're like $7 and change a piece if they haven't gone up. And you can look around and you can actually find some that are, $2 or $3 a piece. These tool holders, the cutter bodies that we use for cutting the seats, actually have a replaceable insert in them that we use different styles of cutters, and we can change them out. One of the things that I found handy was for changing these things was to actually bolt the tightening and loosening tool to the end of the table up here, and then take your wrench and either tighten or loosen this thing up. It just makes it much faster to change the thing out when you have to. Now these are some of the other bodies that I've made, or some of the other pieces for cutting spring seats, for cutting down valve guide bosses, just all kinds of things. Some of these have indexable inserts in them. Some of them are brazed carbide. This is a tool I made for a spring seat on an engine that we had to cut spring seats in. And this is another one here used for spring seats. So there's just all kinds of different little tools that you can make, and they're very handy. I've also made my own bodies for the machine to be able to have additional cutter bodies when you're cutting seats and you have to cut a lot of valves that are fairly large or fairly small. I've made a driver that works out real well with these. Actually, this is used with the seat cutters, and the one that seems to have eluded Sunnen, unless they've got one, was this one for the 6mm top pilot. I like this one a lot for cutting the smaller seats, like on the foreign car heads and what have you. Works out great. I also made a cutter body for 3/8 hole that I can use with a traditional pilot if I have to use it on someone else's machine or my own, or if I don't have a Sunnen pilot and I have to use a spring pilot or something like that, I can still get the job done. One of the things we all used to hate was the height that we had between the head and the table. And there was a company a few years back, probably a whole bunch of years back now, they used to make about a 2-inch spacer for the head that would jack the head up, and you could get a lot more stuff into your machine. We always wanted them to make the back so it was higher, so we could stick some small block Chevys end to end on there, so we could do some work on the top of the block. But no, that never did happen. But it's just something we have to live with. I think that's about it. I've shown you, I think, most of the speed secrets I've got. If you have any, please share them along with this video, because we're all trying to make a living in doing this stuff, and we all want to make our job a lot easier. So, if you have any questions or comments, give me a call here at Costa Mesa R&D. This is John Edwards signing off for now. We'll see you soon.